Hello, our samurais, and welcome to our Samurai Lab Lesson 6. This lesson we will be looking at the first, last functions, and also we'll be looking at um, if else and case when. I think this lesson shouldn't take that long. I'll try to keep it shorter than usual, and I'll give, as always, some tips and some common mistakes that people make. So I hope you enjoy this, and let's get to it. So we're going to open up the script that we've been working on throughout this whole course, and I'm going to maximize this, okay? And as always, let's start with loading our libraries. So let's go here to the top of the script. Let's Control Enter. Let's load our CSV file into a data frame called my first data frame. And then we're not gonna be doing all this. We're gonna skip that. We're just gonna go back. Well, we're gonna go all the way to the end. Then let's just call it data 5. Oh, sorry, data 5. Now the first function that we'll be looking at is called first. So we're gonna write here my first data frame. We're gonna use the pipe operator to pipe the next function in. We're going to do a mutate, but actually before the mutate, let's use some of what we used last time. Let's do a group by. Group by, we're going to do a group by. If we look at our data frame here, let's group by type. So type here, then we're going to do a pipe and then a mutate, and then we're going to look at our first function called first. First function called first. That was funny. At least I thought it was funny. Let's see. First, it says extract the first, last, or end value from a vector. A vector, of course, can be a variable in our data frame, right? So, sometimes when you're working with a data set, you might want to know, like, hey, I want to know what's the difference between the first element of the group and the last element of that group. Now, before we go and use last, which I guess you can expect what it does, right? Let's let's just use first. So we're gonna create a new variable called, let's call it delta, right? And delta is gonna be equal to, let's see what we can subtract. Let's keep it easy. We're gonna be grouping by type, we said, and then let's just, to keep it very, very simple, let's use the variable called number, and let's try to subtract from here number minus first number, okay? Number, which is the variable, minus first number. And then you remember with na.rm, here we don't have any NAs, but we should probably keep it. Actually, we go into here, we use value, and let's do value here, and let's not place in na.rm. Okay, let's see what we get here. So it executed, no problems. Let's look at our data 5, and then here we have, of course, the first is number, right? We're doing value minus first number, so value is 10 minus first number is 1, so 10 minus 1 is 9, right? That's correct. But once we get here to row 3, to observation 3, we have no value, NA, right? So it's gonna give us, of course, an NA, and that's why it's very important, and I cannot stress this, if your function has an ability to take NARM equal false, then you should probably always include it, just to be on the safe side, unless you really want to just return an NA. In that case, please, don't include it. Actually, even then, you can still write NA.rm equal false, for example, and make it very explicit that you're not eliminating RMs. In this case, we're going to say true. because we do want to get rid of them. And let's see how our data frame looks. We're gonna re-execute. Remember, you can re-execute by pressing Control Enter anywhere in the in the block of code. So it can be line 50, 51, 52, it doesn't really matter. It'll execute the whole chunk. You can see how all of it gets basically sent to the console for execution. Okay, now let's look at data 5. And well, we still have NA. Interesting. Well, I was hoping that would give us a different. I was hoping maybe to see a 0 here. But well, it is what it is then. Great. I've honestly, I've never really used na.rm for first or last. But it should be removing the NA. Apparently it's not replacing it with a 0 or something like this. But that's fine. We'll see how we can deal with that later. In any case, we're basically doing in the next x, for example, we have 30 and it subtracted 1, which was the first element of this group, right? That's what we can do with first. Now what if we change this to last? Now we have a value of delta is 1, so we're doing value minus the last of the group. So value minus the last of the group, which is number, value is 10. The last is 10. It's 9, sorry. Because it's x, right? We're grouping by type. So we're doing 10 minus 9, that's 1. So that's correct. So that's how you use last. Actually, let's keep this. I should have probably done that so we can always keep it inside. So I'm gonna do the following. First, delta 2 equal value minus last number. And then I'm not gonna place NA.rm. Actually, it's NA.rm. Oh no, actually it's NA underscore. Let's see what happens. Oh yeah, it says it doesn't exist unused argument. So yeah, make sure that you consult always the help of the function to make sure that how is it that you run NA.rm or NARM. In this case, I'm not gonna write it, right? It seems like it didn't work as we expected here, so that's fine. I don't think it's something critical. Now we have delta 2, and let's execute this. We have delta and delta 2, and we have it just as kind of like what we wanted. We have the value minus the last of that group is 9, right? The last element of that group, and then 13 minus 15 minus this is group Y, so that would be 10. 15 minus 10 is 5. So it's doing what we expected it to do. So that's kind of how you can use first and last, right? It's maybe the use is kind of a little bit niche, but sometimes you want to know what's the difference between the first element of a group and what comes next, or sometimes you just want to know the difference between the first element and the last element. So let's do that. How would that look like? Delta 3 equal, let's say first value minus last value. We execute that, and then we get here the first minus the last value. So value here is 10. The last value is 40. So we get minus 30. It's interesting because here for group Y, the first value is 15 and the last one is 45. So that should be also 30, right? Yeah. So, it was just a big coincidence that our first and last value for both groups ended up being minus 30. That was not on purpose, but that was just a big coincidence. Yeah, and I know it makes it a little bit difficult to understand, the if it's really doing it by group, but it is. Now, I think there's nothing else to say about first and last. Um, One thing I do want to end up with is, you notice I used a group and I didn't say anything. Maybe you spotted it, but I never really ungrouped this, right? So please remember, every time you finish using a group, use ungroup, and then you should be fine. Now, we're not done yet with this lesson. We still have at least another 15 minutes, I guess. I'll try to keep it short. And we're going to be looking at if else, and then case when. So let's look first at if else. I'm gonna be doing it after the ungroup, right? I'm gonna do another mutate just because I don't want the mutate to be applied to only the groups, but just in general. And here I'm gonna find, let's say, we're gonna create a column that is called is type X, and then we're gonna be using the function if else for this. Now, what is if else? Let's look at what if else is. If else, vectorized if else, right? If else is a vectorized if else compared to the base R equivalent if else. This function allows you to handle missing values in the condition with missing and always takes true, false, and missing into account when determining what the output type should be. So basically you give it a condition and it's going to return true or false, and depending on that, here is when the condition is true, here's when the condition is false, right? So that's basically what it's gonna be doing. Pretty straightforward. So let's see how that works, how it looks in action. If else, and our condition, remember we saw some conditional operators, etc. in lesson 2, I believe. So if you're a bit lost on that, please go watch lesson 2 so that you can get a refresher on that. That's probably relevant if you've never taken any sort of, let's say, programming class in high school or university. That's what I would recommend, that you go to lesson 2. Now, with that said, let's do our condition. Our condition is gonna be, and here's where we can use very cleverly str detect. So let's do it with str detect. Str, if you remember, str detect will return true or false based on the string and the pattern. So our string is gonna be type, and our, I think it's nope, the string we're looking for is X. Is it capital X? Yes, it is. So X. And I think that's it. Do we need to provide anything else? Let's see. Str detect says no, string and pattern. That's it. So now we have our condition here. This is gonna be returning, of course, a true or a false. And then if our condition returns true, which gets written here, we're gonna say that it's yes. Otherwise, we're gonna say no. And let's execute this. Let's see. And there we go. Whenever type X, we get a yes, Y, no. X, yes, Y, no. Very, very simple. Now, let's write this again. Let's say that just for the sake of it, let's I'm gonna copy this here. I'm just gonna comment this out. Remember, if you want to comment something out of the code, you can always use a hashtag. So I'm gonna comment that out, and instead of using str_detect, I'm just gonna say type equal x, and this should give exactly the same result. See, nothing changed. It's exactly the same result. I like using str_detect, right? Because you can add multiple conditions here for the strings inside str_detect. Very convenient. But you can also use it like this. Now I'm gonna keep using str_detect, right? And you can also provide another if else inside the condition, inside one of these two. So let's say that if it's type X, it's yes. If it's no, let's say that we're going to write another if else in there. So if else, and then let's say, yeah, we only have two types. That's okay. If else Y, well, let's str detect type Y, then we're gonna be doing, if it's yes, we're gonna say type Y, and if it's not, we're gonna say not type Y. Let's execute this again. This condition will probably, it should never ever activate, because we're gonna be detecting that it's a, if it's not an X, it's gonna be a Y. So it's either gonna be yes or type Y. What we see as answers, yes and type Y. See, this other condition will never activate. But what I want to get at here is that you can see how if else, basically you can keep nesting if else's. You can go to as many as you want, but as you've noticed, when we have, if we keep nesting things, it starts getting a little bit more complicated to see where something starts and something ends. I guess you could press enter here, right? And that would kind of tell you like, oh, okay, so this is one condition and then this one is inside this if else because it's landing inside. I guess you could do that, right? But it gets a little bit messy. So I personally do not recommend that you do more than 2 levels of if else. That's the most you should probably do, 2, because otherwise it starts getting very complicated, and it's much more difficult to read. There's a better solution for that, and also one that allows for a few other nifty tricks that I will be discussing. So what is this other way that I'm talking about? Well, that is called case 1. So we're gonna place ourselves here inside, yeah, we're still inside the mutate. Let's call it is type x2, and then we're gonna do case, not case match, sorry, case when. Case when. And case when has a slightly different syntax from if else. In case when, you first need to give the condition, and then you need to use a squiggly mark to say what the result of that will be. So what is that? What does that look like? Let's see. So let's use str_detect again. We're going to be recreating exactly the same thing that we did with the if else, but using a case when. And then we're going to add yeah, no, I think that's pretty much it. Yeah, we're going to do it like that, and then we're going to see what kind of stuff we get. So I'm going to use str_detect. Of course, we can also use a condition saying type equal x, but I like using str_detect. That's a personal preference. str_detect type x, and then instead of providing a comma and saying what happens when it's true, you use a squiggly mark like this. Make sure that your keyboard is set to the right region, because you might have some issues if it's, for example, here, let's say US PC maybe. See, that this mark is slightly, this is completely different, these two, right? And this one will not work. It has to be this one. In my case, I set my keyword to US, and then that's how I can use the correct squiggly mark. I don't know how to call it actually, but yeah, I call it the squiggly mark. So after you put your condition, whatever comes after the squiggly mark is basically the result. So we're gonna say here that it's yes. We're gonna use 2. Well, it doesn't really matter because it's in another variable called isTypeX2. So let's execute this, and hopefully you will spot something interesting. So what can we see here? In the first example we had if else, and then we provided our condition, and we provided what happens if it's true, what happens if it's false. In case when, we just provided what happens when it's true. We didn't provide anything what happens when it's false. And because we didn't provide anything, we got an NA. So that's why you see an NA. Now this can be advantageous. Sometimes you will want to generate an NA for something, right? It's like, okay, I'm interested if this condition is true, but anything else, I just want it to be NA. I don't want to worry about that. So one way of doing it is like this. I think you could also use an if else and then use NA, but that might cause some issues. Actually, let's try. So type Y. Let's see if it executes if we say it like this. And it did. So you could also use an if else to do the same thing that we did with the case when, right? But you actually need to type the NA in there. This one is a lot lazier, right? And it requires a little bit of knowledge of what's happening there. You know that whatever condition is not met will just return an NA. So that's handy. Something that you should keep in mind if you ever want to just introduce NAs and don't want to explicitly write a condition for that, or write it as the output of a condition. That said, how can we deal then? What if we really didn't want the NAs to be there? Well, we have 2 options. One is write another condition where we have str_detect type and then y equal type y. So let's see how that would look. Actually, we're not here. It should be in here. So we're still working inside the case when. You see how to separate different cases, right? You use a comma at the end of your first condition with the result, comma, enter, and then you start a new line, str_detect type, I'm missing a T, y, and then the result should be type y. And if we re-execute this, we should have now type y. Now, another way in which we can do this, because we know if we were just interested in x being yes and everything else just being something else, we don't care about it. There's a catch 'em all condition. I think that's what they're called, a catch 'em all condition that you can use in case when. How do we write that one? Let's actually do it. So I'm gonna type another one, is type x3 equal case when str_detect type x, result is yes, and then our catch 'em all condition is written like this. You start with true, do the squiggly mark, and then here is like, let's call it catch 'em all Pokemon style. That was not paid advertisement, by the way. If Nintendo, if you're seeing this, I just advertise Pokemon, so send some money my way, or at least, or maybe don't sue me. I don't know. Okay, so now we have here is type 3, is type x3, case when we use this particular condition like here, basically anything that is not x will return catch them all, which is y. Right, so very, very simple to use. Extremely simple, actually, I would say. And I think that basically brings us to the end of this lesson, right? I'm trying to make the lesson shorter. I understand that many of you are very busy, and 45 minutes to just look at a few functions might be too complicated. So I'm trying to keep it shorter than usual, but still give you a lot of insight into how you can use these functions, some common mistakes that you might um, run into, or some interesting ways in which you can use those functions too. Today, just to do a quick recap, we looked at using the first, last functions and how to operate within a group, for example. Then we also looked at if else and case when. Remember, the result of whatever you have here doesn't necessarily have to be a character. It can also be a string. Well, not a string. It can also be a number, right? An integer or a double, you name it. You can even have certain conditions be, let's say, a formula itself. So how would that look like? Let's say, for example, here that, or you can say, you could have it reference another column, right? So let's say, let's quickly modify this so you see what I'm saying, because we did a very, very simple example here. Let's say that instead it says type x, right? And I know I said we would be over, but I think with this we'll really be over. Let's say that instead of that, I just want to say that it's equal to letters, right? If we do that, it means that whenever it finds type x, it will just return letters, which was basically the letter that we had there, right? So you can also make it equal to a variable, and same for here too. I mean, in the if else, you could also do, I believe, the same. So if I type letters here, hopefully it doesn't crash. Yes, it's exactly the same. So you can make it equal to a variable or return a variable. You can also make it so that if it's type x, it performs a particular type of calculation, right? So very, very quickly, I know I said we would be done, guys, but you know, sometimes I just want to share more information with you, and this is one of those times. I really feel the need for speed. No, I'm just joking. But yeah, I think it's worth it. So here, instead of returning letters, and probably, look, I'm gonna do something and probably will get some sort of error on purpose. Let's see if it happens. So we're gonna say that if it's type x, we're gonna be doing number times value times value. And there we go. Now, why did it go wrong? Well, it went wrong because here, you know, remember back in lesson, I think it was lesson 1, no, lesson 2, the first lesson where we imported a data frame, right? We specified the types. So usually variables have a type. And in this case, we're saying that is type x would be some sort of numerical, a double or an integer or something like this. But we're also telling it, hey, whenever it's not type x, just give a string. So you'll end up running into a situation where it tells you, hey, you know, I don't understand because sometimes it's a double, sometimes it's a character. Why are you doing this to me? Right? Why? Of course, there's a way in which you could change this. One way would be to just say that instead of this, you just say it's a 0, and then it's gonna work, right? You'll see a 0. Or you could alternatively just say like, hey, you know, I want to keep it as a string. So instead of, once we do this operation, I'm just gonna, and this is a bonus function for you guys. I think it's called as string. Let's check. Okay, it's not as. Is it a string? Or maybe toString? Yes, it's toString, sorry. Not as string. toString. And if we have it like this, hopefully it shouldn't complain. And now we have, oh well, we have a little bit of a problem here. It actually put everything in there for all the strings, so that's not gonna work, right? But maybe we can do here tidy version. Okay, instead of using toString, because that's proving to be difficult, and I think that's the beauty about programming, that you can always find creative ways to solve issues. You see that I tried something here, didn't really come out the way I thought it would, and instead of giving up, I'll be like, okay, let's try something else. Let's try a function called paste. Remember paste, we used it here when we were passing down, and I told you that this was probably a good function to remember. And if we do it like that, boom, there we go. That's what we wanted, right? We wanted exactly just one string, that is number times value. So we have number times value, 10, boom. And paste once again saves the day. Why do I say once again? Because paste, I think it's one of the, I would say it's a bit of an underdog function. It's so easy to forget about it, but every now and then it comes and just saves the day. In this case, it just came and saved the day, and it allowed me to just basically perform this operation and then still have it work and not crash like it did earlier. And that's all because I basically do this multiplication, and then the paste function will return, it will concatenate strings. No, this is not. It will concatenate the strings. So if we look at that, it says paste. Yeah, concatenate strings. And with that, I think that yes, we're definitely over this time. I know it took a little bit longer, but sometimes you just feel the need to share a little bit more. And I think it was really worth it to explain some cases when you might just break case when, and then you'll be scratching your head and thinking like, oh, what the hell, I don't understand what's happening here. What is Dr. Cuesta gonna tell me? Is he here? Oh no, he's not here because he's not having a lesson yet. What should I do? Oh, I could email him. Yes, you could email me, or you could just comment on the video and I will try to reply. Or I could just explain it to you and make sure that this doesn't happen and you don't bother at all with this question, right? That you have some time to see it. With that said, yes, we have come to the end of our class. I hope that you have enjoyed it. And please, if you like what I'm doing, please like and subscribe. Please tell your friends if you're enjoying these classes. I would really appreciate that support. If you can watch the video more than once, that would be great. And yeah, that's it. Thank you for joining today. Let's continue on our road to becoming a samurai. And class dismissed. See you next time.